In the rare event that we actually get to sit down and listen to the voices of trans men, it is just so unfortunate that this was our representation, Elliot Paige. Now, before anyone jumps in the comments, I'll say this. I have nothing against Elliot. I have nothing against his transition, his journey, his individualized path through manhood. But I do have something against how he represents us as trans men. Now, of course, I understand that being trans is not a monolith. There are different ways to represent yourselves. But he wasn't just representing himself. He's speaking on behalf of men, trans men. He's speaking on behalf of masculinity. And he completely misrepresented all of it. And I don't believe that he's a viable candidate to represent trans men, especially the masculine ones. This was his attempt in defining healthy masculinity, and he completely got it wrong in every factual sense. And instead, he defined something more so along the lines of anti-masculinity, that healthy masculinity is essentially the rejection of masculinity, and that is far from the case. I wouldn't necessarily define Elliot Page as a masculine trans man. He more so resembles the feminine side, and in a lot of senses, second guesses himself. And the last thing that we need, especially in representing the masculine trans men out there, the last thing that we need is a trans man who, for the entire time he was in this interview, just sounded so uncertain of himself. And one thing that masculinity provides when it's applied properly is certainty. It provides a stable foundation on which you direct your manhood. And he didn't sound certain of that at all in any sort. And for that to be how we're being represented is quite disappointing, because there are so many trans men out there that can represent masculinity and represent it well, and not define healthy masculinity as a rejection of masculinity. You see, in the interview, he said that, essentially masculinity is a form of being closed off. And he did this little motion, second guessing on whether or not he should talk with his hands. I talk with my hands all the time. What the fuck? Who cares? It's just minor things that suggest that his masculinity, if he wants to be more masculine, it just needs to be sharpened. And he needs to kind of continue that journey more individualistically, as opposed to speaking on behalf of the community, because that's not at all how masculine trans men operate. Of course, when you're first getting started, you're still giving into some of the ways that you were as a female, but in the grand scheme of things, when you've actually undergone that journey and that purging and figuring out who you are, you're not operating like that anymore. So it's very disappointing. On my page, I specifically speak on these topics when it pertains to masculinity, and what toxic masculinity looks like, what healthy masculinity looks like, and it just sucks that he completely captured the antithesis of everything that I discuss. And so we need a trans man who's actually going to be out there being able to actually keep up in these conversations. And the fact that he was stumbling and stammering over just about every single word that was coming out of his mouth, and he was going through a very gentle interview. I mean, this lady was just so gentle with him, so kind, so easy. I can only imagine how much he would have stumbled and stammered in a room full of men who were calling into question his own masculinity. I just gotta say that I don't think he would survive it. And as trans people, we need a strong representation, just in general, throughout the entire community. We need somebody who's certain of themselves and certain of what they represent. We don't need somebody stumbling and stammering over every single word that exits their mouths as if they aren't sure. That's dangerous, because then it would be used against us. Then they will see us all as that. And the last thing I need is someone speaking on behalf of me and has no clue. That's horrible in every sense of the word. Again, I have nothing against Elliot Paige, but this was a terrible interview. And like I said, it was soft. This should have been a breeze, because you're dealing with such a gentle woman. She wasn't coming at you critically. Nothing. Wasn't questioning your identity. She was just wanting to see what you thought. And these were your thoughts. Yeah, it's a no for me. And hopefully, for the next time that a trans man actually is able to come forward and represent us, hopefully he represents us a little bit better than this, because this was horrendous. But yeah, that's just my thoughts.